welcome back to my channel. I'm Deanna, and I kind of wanted to create this channel to share my love of books, of travel, and just to share maybe some small little moments of life in between. So I'm glad you're here, and I hope you choose to stick around for future videos. Okay, so today's video is just about the roller coaster of emotions that we feel when picking up a book. So I'm excited to share a lot of the books that have touched me or impacted me in different ways. Okay, so I'm gonna start out today's video with maybe a little bit of the heavier stuff. These are books that absolutely made me ugly cry. And as I talk about these books, just to preface, I will do a pop-up of the book cover on the screen. So I'm excited to kind of get into it. And so one of the books that I immediately thought about when I thought about books that made me cry was the book The Bridge to Terabithia. This book, at its core, I was not prepared for as an elementary school kid. But I feel like this book, with the power of friendship and the imagination that the main characters go through, it makes you realize and remember the importance of like human connection. Okay, so with this next book, I read it around like my senior year of high school, freshman year of college. I'm glad that I've read it on like a Thursday, Friday, so that I can have the weekend to recover. Because truly, this book put me through an emotional roller coaster when I first read it. And it took me a really long time to really formulate an opinion. But the book is Me Before You by Jojo Moyes. I do feel like there was a lot in that book that I just was like not prepared for, because I didn't want to know really anything about the book before I got into it. Okay, and the next one is just like the bittersweet experiences that you have and the sacrifices that can be made for love. And that book is the book 5 Feet Apart. And I mean, all of these books that I've talked about so far, I have not read in years. And so this is all just coming kind of from the memory of reading it kind of at the time of life that I was like going through. And I, like from memories, just these books were books that in a lot of ways altered my brain chemistry, and I kind of got me started on my journey of wanting to read more. Okay, so the next books that I want to talk about is the book If I Stayed by Gail Forman, because I feel like the way that this book goes about talking about and weaving together moments in order for the main character to figure out whether to stay, where her life would be drastically altered. Just kind of, at the time, I think made me think a lot about love and loss, and just how we can move forward even through the sadness of maybe what comes and what life throws at us. The next book theme is books that make me think. The kind of books that try to challenge your perspective, kind of push you to reflect and think about things in maybe a different way than you had initially gotten into the book with. Okay, so the first book that in the past few years that has done that for me is The Year of Yes by Shonda Rhimes. I feel like this book is like getting a pep talk from one of the most successful women in TV. It's funny, it's inspiring, and I feel like it's relatable in a lot of different ways, because I think we as a society tend to say no to things out of fear and insecurity, and it's interesting to see one woman's way to climb out of that hole of fear and to get out of your comfort zone. And when you do that, the amount of amazing experiences that you can have. It has taught me in a lot of ways that I can be successful in my own realm of things and kind of redefine what success looks to me, and slowly pull myself out of fear and insecurity into doing things that maybe make me a little bit more nervous, like doing YouTube videos, because for a while I feel like I also was someone who kind of wanted to pursue this and talk about books and talk about travel and talk about life, but it always made me nervous. And so I feel like me saying yes to this is kind of pushing myself out of my comfort zone, because although I talk about books and suggest books to the people in my life, I was always too afraid to do it online and to kind of do it in any capacity like this. And so I'm excited to kind of see where this can take me. Okay, and this last book that I'm going to talk about within this theme is a book that has an interesting kind of double-edged sword for me. It's the book The Untethered Soul. And I think this book was, like, for the most part, really well written, but I feel like it just was hard for me. And granted, everybody kind of has their own journey, so it was maybe a take it and apply it in the way that you see fit. But I also feel like I just wanted something more out of the book than what was given. So in a way it did its job, but in another way I kind of wanted it to do more. Okay, going into the next theme of the books is books that leave you happy. This first one I read again as a kid, and I feel like it's a book that I've always kind of come back to, and it's Anne of Green Gables. And I feel like in a lot of ways, especially growing up, I felt very related to Anne, because the way that her brain works is similar to kind of the way that my brain works. So I often felt comforted and happy when rereading it because of the heart and the humor and just like the lessons of friendship and like your found family in a lot of ways that I just don't know that there's a lot of books that can compare. And then the next book that I feel like also just kind of makes me happy is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, because I feel like this is a timeless classic and just another, I feel like one of my first introductions to like kind of the slow burn romance, almost like enemies to lovers, that I had never really been introduced to. However, I feel like there are a lot of characters that we can identify in the people in our realm of life. So I feel like this is a book that is always a go-to for me, that if I'm in a reading slump, this isn't something that will get me out of that for sure. To jump into the next book and the last book within this section of theme is the book The Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Society. And I feel like this book is just a gem of a book. It's charming, it's heartfelt, it's full of warmth, and I feel like it's written in a way that I had never read before. I don't know that I have ever really read a ton of like historical fiction. And so I think this is a book that had like really got me into that. It's just set after World War II, and I feel like it just, the way that it talks about bringing a community together in maybe unexpected ways and the impact that your community can kind of have on you, I loved, was grateful for. Okay, with this next theme and these next set of books, these books bring me back to a simpler time where it talks about childhood adventures or maybe first loves or moments of self-discovery or just kind of books that make you nostalgic almost for a feeling. Okay, so the first book, Fault in Our Stars by John Green. I personally love John Green. I love the way this book is written. I feel like it's just kind of one of those books that leaves you with a mix of emotions, and a book that you kind of always want to go back to. Okay, just to preface, I'm not saying that this book, especially in particular, was well written, or the movies that followed the series were great, but it is a book and a movie series that, again, is nostalgic, is the Twilight series by Stephanie Meyer. I feel like it was fun for me to think back on the phenomenon that was the Twilight series, and I feel like it was the first like fandom that I feel like I really was a part of. Rereading this series really brings back those same feelings of excitement and drama. It definitely is a guilty pleasure book. I loved it. Okay, and another book, and the last book in this section of theme, is a retelling of Beauty and the Beast, and it's called Beauty. It makes you kind of long for the simpler times of like fairy tale enchantment. We have come down to the last theme to kind of round us out. Theme number 5. Books that I'd sell my soul to read for the first time. Books that were so good the first time that I read it that I would love to go back and read it for the first time once again. First book, Love is Mixtape by Rob Sheffield. This book I actually got from watching a different YouTuber's book recommendations on a celebrity's reading. I think it was Jack Edwards. I can't remember the celebrity, but I was like, okay, I'll write this down and I'll get it at the bookstore. But I feel like this book was just so good as far as like the reflection of loss and love and the soundtrack of life, and how music holds so many memories and can take you back to different times in your life of what you were going through, and the way that he connected his poignant moments in his life. I feel like really he did it in a way that I feel like made me want to kind of relive different like music and the impact that it had at different times in my life, and just kind of discovery into realizing that music actually does hold so much emotion within it. And anyway, I loved it, and I feel like it was a book that was very emotional and profound for me. Okay, the next one was in a lot of ways my first introduction into like the cowboy romances, and it was The Longest Ride by Nicholas Sparks. And I feel like the parallel stories of 2 generations of love stories really created the emotional depth and love of this book that I wanted it to be. And I feel like is another reason why I feel like I would want to like reread this book for the first time and just be able to really dive into like the plot, the stories, and just really find my love in it again. I'm really sad that this video is coming to an end, but the last book that I really want to talk about that I've really loved, that's a popular book talk book, is the book Funny Story by Emily Henry. And again, this is a book similar to the book Me Before You in my brain, in the sense of I didn't really know what it was about going into it. All I know was it was a book that was talked about. It was popular on Book Talk, but I went into listening to this book no context. And so I think that also kind of helped me not judge the book before I really had the time to like listen to it for myself. And so this book was kind of a refreshing blend of humor, wit, and heartfelt moments. And I feel like the narrators also on this book really heavily influenced my love of this book as well because of the way that they read it. So I feel like revisiting this book will never be quite as good as the first read. I also think that if I were to have reread it for the first time, I would like buy the physical book and listen to the audiobook because I think that would add to the experience. But again, another book that I am obsessed with. And we are at the end of the video. It's time to wrap it up. And I'm glad if you've made it this far that you've made it this far. Thanks for watching. I am in need of book recommendations all the time. I'm always happy to take book suggestions. Leave it in the comments below. I'll be excited to see you next time. But until then, happy reading, and I'm excited to have you here.